In this assignment, we're going to look at, hypothetically, how much money you could save over a long period of time if you saved a certain amount each year and you earned a certain amount of interest by investing that money each year. So we're going to start with your savings each year, okay? And we're going to say, let's say you save $3,000 every year, and then we're going to say the interest rate on those investments is going to be 6%, okay? It's not out of the ordinary for stock investments over a long period of time. Might even do better. Okay, so first thing we're going to do, though, is we're going to name these, not just label them here, but actually name them, and I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So in Excel, you can use what's called a named range, and what you do that by highlighting this figure, and this is in the cell C2, right? And I'm going to come up here in the upper left-hand corner, and I'm going to call this savings, and I'm going to press enter. Pressing enter is important, otherwise it doesn't save it. So what this means is, when I type savings here, and I basically replace the cell's address with this savings, what that means is we can refer to whatever is in C2 as savings anywhere else in the spreadsheet. So if I come down here, I type in equals savings, and press enter, that $3,000 figure is going to come down here. You'll notice it's without the formatting, but so you can format it like that, but it's the same number. And that's going to be really useful. You'll see why in a moment. So then also I want to do that with the interest rate. So this is the interest rate. See, it's in C6. All I have to do is highlight that interest rate, come up here, and replace the C6 with interest. And that same thing. I can then refer to whatever is in this cell C6 with the word interest. So if I type that in like that, and here it's giving me the interest rate as a proportion, but you can format it as a percent or take it back to proportional, whichever. Okay, so that's my interest rate, that's my savings each year. Now we're going to think about, say you're working for 40 years, okay, over the lifetime until you retire, okay? We want to represent that in Excel, okay? The way I'm going to do that just really simply by putting numbers, say, years 1 through 40, okay? So I start out, so what I'm trying to do is just have numbers 1 through 40 here in this column. So how do I do that? Well, this is Excel, so you don't have to do things repetitively. We don't have to actually type out 1 through 40. Instead, what I can do is I start typing it out, 1, 2, 3, and then I can highlight these 3 cells and line up my cursor in the bottom right-hand corner so that the cursor becomes this black cross, and then I can drag it down like this until I get to 40, like that. And you'll notice, as soon as you do that, Excel notices the pattern that it's just consecutive integers like that, and then it just repeats the pattern. I mean, just as an aside, let's say you were doing 2, 4, 6, 8, you know, and then you really would only do 2, 4, 6, and I highlight this and I scroll down. Excel again is going to continue that pattern by just adding 2. I mean, you're crazy with this. 1, 4, 7. It's adding 3 each time. Obviously, Excel is going to then continue that pattern if you drag it down. So that's just one trick in Excel to get a bunch of consecutive or patterned numbers without doing a lot of doing much work. Okay, so remember, each of these numbers reflects a year that you're working, from the first year to the 40th year, and then after the 40th year, you're retiring. So the goal really is to know how much money you've accumulated in that 40th year, okay? Given that you're going to be investing $3,000 each year, and you're going to be earning this 6% interest rate each year, okay? And obviously, these are hypotheticals, it's oversimplified, but this is often how people get rough estimates of, how much money they'll have when they retire. Okay, so I want to add additionally, say we're going to call it year 0, and that's in that year 0, you're going to just start off. You haven't worked yet, but you have this. You haven't worked at, let's say, a full-time job yet, or your job after college. But you're going to invest your starting funds of $3,000, and actually, instead of typing that $3,000 in, I'm going to type in just savings. Okay, and so you put in your. That's that initial investment of $3,000 that you're putting in at the end of this first period. Say before you're taking on some full-time job. Okay. Or maybe a better paid job or whatever it might be. Okay, so now you want to know how much money do you have at the end of year 1. Okay? And we're going to start with the equal sign. You always start with the equal sign whenever you're doing a formula or calculation. Okay? So what do you have at the end of year 1? Well, you do have the $3,000 we put in before, so I'll highlight that. And it just enters the address, G9. Added to that, okay, is going to be your interest on that money, right? So it's going to be that money multiplied by your interest rate, okay? So this is just fairly simple. You have, the money you had from before plus the money you earned on that by investing it, which is the interest rate. Multiply that by that previous money. You can see the multiplication sign is the asterisk, right? And then I'm going to add additional money, right? Because each year I'm putting in my $3,000 in savings, okay? And then at the end of that, I can press enter, okay? So then at the end of year 1, you have the money you put in previously, you have the interest that you earned on that money, and you have the money then you put in at the end of year 1. So you have $6,180 or $6,180. Okay, so obviously we want to know how much money you have at year 40. Well, it turns out what you have to know is that this formula here is actually going to replicate each and every year. And so all I have to do is, if I highlight this number here, it's really highlighting this formula. I line up my cursor at the bottom right-hand corner so that I see the black cross, and then I double-click. And then it copies down this same formula so that at the very bottom here, I'll highlight this column. You can highlight the whole column by clicking on the letter at the top of it, and then I can format it with a $sign. I can see that I have just under $500,000 at the end of the 40th year. So what's going on here? Well, we get under the hood here. So, and notice that, in each cell we have the numbers, but then if you click on it, you'll see the underlying formula up here in the the formula bar after the FX. So, and obviously this is a Mac, but this is sort of simple Excel stuff, and it'll look pretty similar on the PC. So notice in that initial formula, it's G9 plus G9 times interest plus savings, right? If I go down to the next line here, now it's changing the formula. It's not G9 anymore, G10, right? So each time it's updating the formula, right? It keeps the interest and the savings. Those are constants, right? Because they're up here at the 3,000, 6,000. What it's changing is what it's multiplying by the interest and what it's in this first figure. And so it's basically, by doing that, it's accumulating this money. What this is called in Excel, it's called something called relative referencing. And this is a powerful feature of Excel, which is that Excel is pretty smart in guessing what you want to do when you have a series of numbers, when you have a series of formulas, and it will update it in this way. So basically what it realized, right, is, in this case, is that what I wanted to do was include in this formula, in this cell, the figure from the previous cell. And so it's basically doing that each time so that you can see how the money accumulates. So we can say, okay, if you invest $3,000 for 40 years, 33, I should say $3,000 every year for 40 years, with the compounded interest, then the money you have at the end is just under 500,000. Okay, and then you can play with these figures a little bit to see, how much more would you say have to invest to get to $1 million. So if it's like $5,000, not quite there yet. $6,000. You see how as soon as I update this figure here, then the savings that go in, it's just interpreting in that way. So that's another powerful feature of the named range right here is that I don't have to change each and every one of these formulas. All I have to do is change this one figure, and because I'm using this named range of savings, it's going to recalculate it automatically. And now you can see I'm getting up to just shy of $1 million if you're investing $6,000 a year. You can see what happens if I have a better return on my investments. So it's going over $1 million and so on. So this assignment should help you understand a little bit more about some of Excel's basic but pretty powerful features.